There are a lot of men out there trying to get right with God who think it's a solo mission. More discipline, more private prayer, lock yourself in a room and grind it out with God until you're clean. And look, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I have trained for physical combat with more weapons than I can count. And personally, I had a on-again, off-again porn addiction for almost 20 years before I found lasting freedom. And I'll tell you this, the lone wolf strategy, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in war, and it doesn't work in the spirit either. So today, I want to show you something in scripture that most men completely miss when it comes to purity. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. We're going to talk about a promise from God, the mechanism to fulfill that promise, a warning, and the hidden truth. And then at the end, I will give you 3 practical tips to implement this today in your life. All right, section 1 is the promise. Now, I'm going to pull from the ESV translation today because of its integrity and sticking to a direct translation of the original text. So Matthew 5, verse 8 in the ESV. Now, this comes from a portion of the Sermon on the Mount called the Beatitudes. Now, Jesus is teaching, and he says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Now, that's a promise. It's an invitation from God. He says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." You will see God. How? If you are pure in heart. Okay, that's the goal. Every single one of us, every man who takes his faith seriously, we want this. So the question becomes is, how do you actually get there? How do you practice this purity in heart? How do you see God? Okay, so now let's look at section 2, the mechanism, the fulfillment of this promise. How does God bring this promise to pass? How do we get to see God? How do we establish that purity in heart? So I'll look at the writing of John. It's in 1 John 4, verse 12, again from the ESV. And John says, "No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us and his love is perfected in us." Okay, guys, so this is where it gets interesting. John says that God's love is perfected in us only when we love one another. It can't be completed in isolation. Okay, so if you're in monk mode and you're isolating yourself from the world, then you cannot see God because you cannot be loving one another, and therefore God's love will not be perfected in you. Okay, so it's not accidental and it's not incidental that when you have community where you're able to love one another, then God's love is perfected in you. That is the mechanism for purity. Okay, so this means that community is the secret to purity. So real quick, if this is resonating with you so far and you want to join a community of warrior-minded men who are seeking God together, then check out the link in the description below to join our free school group where you will find community and the path to purity. All right, so as I think about this, that community is the secret to purity. It is the path to purity. It makes me think of another verse. It comes from the Proverbs, and it talks about how iron sharpens iron. And a lot of people, they hear this verse, and they think like, oh, great, like we'll just be getting along, we'll be encouraging each other, we'll be refining each other, and iron sharpens iron. And my 2 cents, I think that verse has a lot more of a antagonistic connotation to it when we talk about iron sharpening iron, because I don't think it's a pleasant, happy, cheery thing. Obviously, we get to choose joy as iron sharpens iron, but I think of iron sharpening iron. I'm like, that sounds painful. And what it really sounds like is the opportunity in community, in relationship with other people, to develop things like patience, which is usually never fun. It sounds like the opportunity to practice forgiveness, or to overlook an offense, or to repair trust, or to have conflict resolution, or to establish boundaries and have healthy self-love while loving others, or to express your needs, like learn to speak up for yourself as iron sharpens iron, or to defer your own desires and give preference to someone else. And practice a new level of selfless sacrifice. Or it could be confronting others and calling out blind spots in love, offering encouragement or exhortation or a stern rebuke. And so I think about iron sharpens iron, sounds painful to me. But these are many of the things that if we love one another, right? 1 John 4:12, no one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God's love abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. His love is perfected in us as we relate to each other, as we practice that patience and learn forgiveness and overlook offenses and repair trust and all these things. These are just ways in which we get to love one another, and then God's love is perfected in us. Okay, so this takes us to the third part, which is the warning. Now, also in Proverbs, this is from Proverbs 18, verse 1, It says, whoever isolates himself, seeks his own desire, he breaks out against all sound judgment. He rebels against all sound judgment. Okay, so wisdom says that if you isolate yourself, you are being a fool. Okay, so that's what wisdom says. That's what Solomon wrote. Isolation then isn't something that's neutral. It is a trap. Okay, hear that clearly. Isolation is a trap. Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. If you isolate yourself, you are walking into a trap. Now, if you're a man who has pulled away from community, maybe you were hurt, maybe you were let down, maybe your expectations weren't met, maybe you've been left out, then obviously there's pain and there's some mess that needs to be cleaned up, some emotional processing that needs to occur. But it's not an excuse to embrace isolation as the way, all right? Isolation doesn't give good things. It allows us the permission to seek our own desires, but the warning is we are breaking out against all sound judgment. So it might feel like freedom, but it's actually the freedom to wander off and get lost. All right. So if you are a man who has pulled away from community for whatever reason, you might think you're protecting yourself, but you're not. You're actually feeding your own desires unchecked with no one to confront you, to encourage you. You lack that iron sharpens iron. Painful as it may be, you lack that life-giving process. So the punchline of this warning is that the lone wolf isn't holy. He is just unaccountable. In war, he doesn't win. He's the first to die. In the movies, Hollywood, they make it look so glorious and so cool that the lone wolf, the vigilante hero, all by himself, he wins. And that's a myth. It's not true. The lone wolf isn't holy. He isn't a hero. He doesn't win. He's just unaccountable, and he's quick to be eliminated. In war and in the spirit, it's the same. So the fourth part is this, the truth. This is the secret of the wisdom that is contained in stringing these verses together as we look and say, okay, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. But no one has ever seen God, right? If we love one another, God's love abides in us and his love is perfected in us. And the warning is that if we isolate ourselves, then we seek our own desire and we are breaking out, rebelling against all sound judgment. So the truth is this, if you want to see God, you must walk in purity, right? That's Matthew 5:8. In order to see God, 1 John 4:12, his love must be perfected in us. It must be made complete in us, which only happens if we love one another. So this means that community is the path to purity, which is the path to seeing God. So what does it look like to have community? So this is the punchline, is that community is not the reward for purity. Community is the path to purity. Now, let's talk about what type of community. It's not just hanging out. It's not just having surface level talk, talking about news, weather, sports, like, hey, how's it going? How'd your sports team do? Oh, it's going to be warm today. Oh, did you see that in the news halfway around that world? The thing we don't affect, but let's talk about it because we're awkward and we have nothing else to talk about and we're afraid to be vulnerable. So even though we are in proximity, we're still going to fall for the trap of Proverbs 18, which means we're going to isolate ourselves. Even though we are close to people, we're not going to let our heart be close to people. So the type of community that we're talking about here has two parts, has vulnerability and authenticity. Authenticity simply means I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be genuine. I'm going to be my real self. How I am, I'm going to show up as I am, and I'm going to be true to who I am, and I'm going to let myself be known. And then vulnerability says, I'm going to let you see into my heart and speak into my heart. Now, there's a nuance between vulnerability and transparency, because transparency would be like, hey, I'm going to let you look in, but I'm not going to let you speak in. And I think of it like transparency is kind of like opening the blind of a window and someone can look in. But vulnerability is saying, I'm going to unlock the door and I'm going to open the door and I'm going to invite you in. I'm going to give you access, not just visibility. And so there's a difference between that. So when I'm talking about community, I'm talking about authenticity, which means I'm genuine. I'm not hiding. I'm not trying to doctor things up or play things down. I'm not overemphasizing or exaggerating things, and I'm not hiding things or minimizing. I'm just me. And then vulnerability means I'm not just letting you see the real me, but I'm giving you permission to speak to the real me in a way that can encourage and affect change in me. All right, so community is the path to purity. Now, when we talk about this, when we look at vulnerability, we look at authenticity. These are spiritual disciplines. These aren't soft extras and they aren't easy. for men that can't hack it alone, right? You cannot love in the abstract. You cannot love or learn to love alone. It requires an actual human that you get to interact with, right? That list of things I talked about when it comes to iron sharpening iron. Like when you are in relationship with someone and there is authenticity and there is vulnerability, you get to practice the patience, the forgiveness, the overlooking offenses, repairing trust, conflict resolution. All these things are functions of human relationship because we're not perfect and we make messes. And so what this drives at is this concept that to be fully loved, you must be fully known. Now think about this. If you only know a certain part of me, you only get to interact with that part of me, and for better or worse, to love me or hate me, then you only get to relate to me in that context that you know me. And if there's part of me that you don't know, it's impossible for you to love or reject or hate or accept that part of me that's hidden away. And I think about like this. My wife, we have 2 boys, and when she gave birth the first time, it was all natural and no pain meds, and I'm in the delivery room with her. And I will tell you that I love my wife, but I did not fully know my wife. I did not know the aspect of my wife that with no pain meds gives birth. And after that experience of being in the delivery room with my wife, I now know my wife more fully, and therefore I can love her more fully. And then I could equally talk about, the postpartum adventure. Sometimes the emotions have been like a roller coaster, and that's how it is. And as I get to know her more fully, then I get to love her on her best days and her worst days. And it's the same the way that she treats me. And it's the same that I get to be in safe, authentic, vulnerable community with other men, where when I can make my heart known, then I can receive love in a way that if I keep it hidden, then I can't actually be fully loved because I'm not fully known. And so if someone only loves you at your best, then either it's conditional love or they just don't know you. And so the question becomes, where are you actually known? Like, who knows you and how deep do they know you? Are you giving people the opportunity, the privilege, the invitation to truly know you so that they can love you? And it's risky because it could lead to rejection or it could lead to life-changing love. All right. Now, if nobody in your life can challenge you, if they can't confront you, if they can't see your real struggles, then you're not on the path to purity. You can't be. You're on the path to self-deception, right? You're fulfilling that warning from Proverbs 18 where it says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. So even if you're in proximity with other people, but you don't have that fully known, that authentic, vulnerable community, then you're not letting love in. And so you're actually just seeking your own desire, which is a quick path to self-deception. So that's the warning. Now, let's close this out with the last part is 3 practical tips to implement this today, right? So if you want to have community, which is the path to purity, then here are 3 things that you can do right now. So the first is get one other dude that you can relate to that is safe, that you can share this authentic, vulnerable community. I'm not talking about getting in a group chat. I'm not talking about, joining an accountability program. I'm talking about one man, one guy who knows your real life. And if you don't have one brother that you can do that with, one friend, that is your first assignment. And then part 2 is this: check in 3 times a week. I recommend 2 texts and a phone call. Now, for me and my brother that I do this with, he's my brother-in-law actually, is what this looks like is 2 texts and a phone call. And we space it out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We check in like that. And the phone call, we ideally keep 10 minutes max. That way it's sustainable. And the goal is not a long conversation. The goal is nothing hidden. Now, that is the heart behind checking in 3 times a week. 2 texts, 1 phone call, nothing hidden. Now, the third part of this is ask these 2 questions every single time that you connect, whether it's text, whether it's phone call. It is, first, do you have any failures or secrets that you want to confess? And then it's this: do you have anything hidden? That's it. Everything else is just bonus. Now, you could check in more than 3 times a week. You could make it phone calls every time. I recommend minimum 1 phone call. I recommend 3 times is a good healthy cadence, 3 times a week, and just with one other dude that you trust, that is safe, that you can share that authentic, vulnerable community so they can know you and you can receive love in the deep parts that sometimes otherwise remain hidden. All right, accountability, it only works as deep as you are honest, right? Like that is the game of vulnerability. If you are hiding, you are losing. So let's close out and let's just review what we covered today. We talked about how God's promise is that the pure in heart will see him. And his love is only made complete in us when we love one another. Now, we talked about community. Isolation is not neutral. It's actually a trap. It's a negative, death-producing type thing. And community isn't the reward for being pure. It is the path to purity. Okay? Community is the path to purity. Purity is the way by which we see God. If you want to be fully loved, you must be fully known. The deeper you are known, the deeper you are eligible to receive love. So get one man, get one dude, one brother. Check in 3 times a week. I recommend that as the standard. Make one of those a phone call, and the goal is nothing hidden. That is how you begin to walk in purity. That is how you see God. And if you're watching this and you don't have that man, that brother that you can reach out to, that you can be vulnerable with, if you don't have that brotherhood, don't wait. I've built a free community of men who are doing exactly this. Warriors who take their faith seriously, who pursue purity together and refuse to fight alone. The link is below. Come find your fire team. Stay lethal.